Here's a stocking stuffer to avoid. Made in Abyss, binary star falling into darkness. What a terrible name. And what a terrible game. I'll get more into it in just a second, because you know what is a good stocking stuffer? A gift from Manta Sleep. It's a stressful time of year, and usually I'd be struggling with sleep right now, but Manta Sleep came to me with this amazing mask, and I literally slept like a baby. It's got these adjustable eye cups, and if you get it just right, it's amazing. You can roll over, face up, face side, face down, and there's no discomfort. I've also tried out their cool eye cups, which is really great, especially if you've got a headache or your sinuses are in a bit of pain in these winter months. Don't underestimate this, genuinely, I haven't had a bad night since. Follow the link in the description and the pinned comments, and use code ALEXENTERPRISES for 10% off of all items on Manta Sleep. Thank you Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Right, I played this on the Switch just because I don't have a PS4 or a PS5, but it's available there too. Oh, and PC. Basically, I just played this on the worst possible console, but don't think that that's the only problem here. This game is made up of two story modes, one which adapts the main story up to the end of the first recap film, which is to say the first 8 episodes, which is to say the first 24 chapters, and then there's another story, an original one in which you play as a new explorer of the Abyss. The backdrop of Akihito Tsukushi's manga is a perfect series for the kind of spin-off that a video game can offer, especially the kind of content you'd want from something that releases as irregularly as it does. So how does it hold up? Well, the quality of this game, and really my choice of playing it on Switch, kind of marred it somewhat. The frame rate and overall responsiveness is not the best. And so, first and foremost, if you have a PlayStation, if you have a PC, you should play it on that. Performance aside, the visuals go for a kind of chibi look, and whilst I can kind of understand why they went with that, the characters are drawn in the manga in a very specialized way. They have big heads, sure, but the details are grounded and gritty to reflect the dark nature of that world. And the anime does that pretty well as well. But here, it's almost like the design took one glance at the front covers and thought, chibi it is then. Going through that first campaign, the game consists of cinematics, visual novel-style dialogue, action-adventure gameplay with health bars, hunger, stamina, inventories, and weapons. And there's even the odd QuickTime event here or there. They aren't the good kind of QuickTime event where they immerse you into the story by giving you similar movements to the characters in question. No, here it really is just press the right button to keep the cinematic going. But at least with all of these, you get some gruesome Peggy 18 death sequences to watch when you fail. We start with the obvious. The beginning of the series, an orphanage on the edge of the gaping expanse that is the Abyss. Riko, an orphaned girl who learns and wants to explore this abyss so she can meet her mother who went exploring years and years before her. Reg, a cyborg boy who shows up from deep within the abyss and protects Riko when a large creature rears its ugly head. And the unlikely duo that they go on to form, as Riko sets out to find her mum. Oh yeah, and Reg has amnesia, but clearly has a significant role in Liza's story. For a Switch game that doesn't run very well, you might be surprised to hear that this game actually scratches the Made in Abyss itch, though. It felt fun and refreshing to play this, even if it isn't exactly polished. Waiting forever for manga chapters and anime seasons to come goes by easier when you get stuff like this, especially when it readapts the start of the story so you get to enjoy it in a whole new way, and remind yourself of little details that you might have forgotten about. The first story is more of a tutorial of sorts, where the story is a bit easier on the characters, especially in terms of the monsters that appear, and that makes sense in-world as well. Layer 1 and Layer 2 are nowhere near as horrible as Layer 3, and then 4, and then 5. And that is as deep as this game goes, by the way. You pick up different items and craft them to satiate hunger, fill up your health. When it comes to the curse, something which makes you sick, hurts you, transforms you into a monster, or outright kills you, depending on the layer at which you try to ascend. I always found it funny how they never mentioned the rate of ascent. Like, if you crouch down, are you just doomed to be crouched forever now, unless you want to get cursed? Or unless you find a way to get lower down? I always wondered what happens to the curse if you just jump up and down, you know? Well, if you do it enough, you feel the effects. There you go. By the time I got to the second layer, the inverted forest, I'd fully latched onto the fact that you could cheese the abyss. Wait a few seconds and the curse telegraphed with this purple effect goes away. How long does it take to subside, you ask? Well, let me just say, it takes the perfect amount of time it takes for me to sip and enjoy a nice beverage. It throws a lot at you when you get to the second layer, and the capabilities of the Nintendo Switch, or lack thereof, are your worst enemy. And yeah, then the first story closes with the two parting ways with Ozen and getting to the third layer of the Abyss. I think one of the ultimate weaknesses of the game has to be that decision, you know? This was made at a point where they could have adapted everything up to the 6th layer and had a really great game on their hands that just ends insanely and goes full on with the material at hand. But because they decided to make an original story, not only do you get the characters you know and love and nowhere near as long as you'd like, but you also get an original story that doesn't go as deep as you'd like it to either. It's a thinly written, heavily padded out affair that's wrapped around some poor gameplay mechanics. It's a shame, because if they had just committed to one or the other, I feel like they could have mastered one amazing game. Whereas here we have two half-baked half games, and the piece isn't greater than the sum of its parts. Anywho, the second story starts with our original character, Aki, who, in fairness, you're given the freedom to customize to become yourself. So, now he's Alex. This character is also in the orphanage. So, I'm an orphan now. In this new group, we have Dorothea, Raoul, and Tiare. These are new original characters, and they are your buddies as you go into the Abyss. But not before Raoul falls off a cliff. And then I almost did too. It was very forced, but at the same time, it was a crazy reminder how quickly the story propels the danger element of the Abyss. You report this, and are kind of told to just accept that the Abyss is a dangerous place. A good and harsh lesson, I suppose. And then I went and did a few side quests. The game does a good job involving you in the world of Made in Abyss by having people who've sailed in from overseas curious about the Abyss and wanting to know more without having to delve. Then there are items that you can find in the Abyss that speak of other delvers that you can help. I won't go into any more side quests, but it's a fun added feature. Like when you go exploring in a new area and find Tiare, yeah, apparently they hadn't returned from that first descent either, you both end up stuck together. He gets this weird traumatic flashback, and then the both of you need rescuing. But it's Hablog and Jiro who you end up getting rescued by. It's especially nice considering their characters are being featured in the manga right now too, after so long. After you do a few more quests, Tiare goes missing again, and when you go look for him, you find only his whistle in a pool of blood, with an off-screen voice prompting him deeper into the Abyss. You're told by the orphanage that this is the nature of the Abyss, and it's probably best to just move on. But hey, shiny blue whistle, well done! Speaking for the beginning layers of this story, there's a kind of welcome grinding to it, where you do need to sell the relics that you find in the Abyss, and you do need to make as much food as you can to ensure that you don't run out of hunger. To make so many of the recipes, you need to buy salt. And so there's a reliance that's created between the ease of access of the shop, the fact that you're a kid, and the first layer of the Abyss itself. And with the promotion to Blue Whistle, you can start going to the second layer. And here we end up seeing Tiare again. For some mysterious reason, he says he ain't got much time left, and that he won't return to the orphanage at all, but try to go deeper and deeper to the bottom of the Abyss as soon as possible. And so, like Rico and Liza, here we have our added drive to the story to go to the bottom, to unravel the mystery of Tiare's condition. The fast travel is a pain in the arse. You can only fast travel to a layer's entryway, and you can only fast travel to the beginning of a layer from the end of that layer after you've discovered all the areas on that layer. Or at least that's how I think it works anyway. I think I'm one of 2 people who've made videos on this game, by the way. There were 2 occasions where things were so vague that I just quit the dive altogether and looked up a guide. I'm usually a patient guy when it comes to games, but this one broke me. Make of that a criticism of the way in which these mechanisms affect the gameplay, if you will. You need salt, as much as you can carry. Becoming utterly hungry is a death sentence. Even if you crawl your way to the end, you cannot travel whilst utterly hungry. I would understand this element of the game only if there was some action you could take, or some creature you could kill that was readily available to get you through by the skin of your teeth or something. But there isn't. It's just failure that parades itself as if there's any hope in staying alive. This game is a lesson in how the most negligible thing can quickly become your undoing. So for those of you who want to enjoy the game, heed my warning and invest in salt and guns. And ropes, don't forget ropes. By the time that you get to the 3rd layer, it's a game that's fully about exploration unless you use a guide. But don't let that fool you into thinking that it rewards exploration, because no. In fact, the game seems to actively punish it, almost becoming a Souls-like. You'll learn the layout of the layers before you end up succeeding. Ropes become the most important commodity for the 2nd layer, and it'll pop up again in the 4th, trust me, as being in the center of the layer opens you up to aerial attack. When you put a rope down in one run, it's gone by the next. And because to get to the 3rd layer, we cannot fast travel to it, we have to start in the 2nd layer, use 4 ropes to get down to the 3rd, and only then are we in a position to use the many ropes required for the 3rd. And these ropes, you can spend forever trying to craft them, sure, or spend the 500 coins it takes to buy them each. That's roughly 4,000 coins for an attempt at the 3rd layer. Thankfully, this guy from that side quest gives you tons of money when you run into him, but really, it doesn't address the issue. And the issue is this: you should be able to fast travel to any place that you've just been to. Fast traveling to the beginning of a layer only after having explored everything is just too much, it's too harsh. And looking online, it's too much a barrier of entry for anyone to really bother getting past. I got a bit further than this, defeated the boss of the 3rd layer, and started the 4th, but once again, I couldn't make it back alive. Add that to the labyrinthine 3rd layer being the toughest one to navigate, and you have a recipe for a game that just sucks. I loaded a past save and thought, screw it, I'm gonna try again. There's a phenomenon among gamblers called sunk cost fallacy. That's just a little fun fact for you there, which is in no way meant to insinuate my time playing the game. But yeah, getting back from the very beginning area took me hours and hours. I looked up a guide and it still took hours. The flying beasts, called Madoka Jacks, around the 3rd layer are basically invulnerable when you try to ascend by rope, so you have to look up a guide and find the one entrance that can be ascended via cave. And then, finally, after the emotional equivalence of watching your loved ones die, you reach the top. The boss is done. Then the next run is going down and ticking off all of the locales of the 3rd layer, so that after that moment, you can just travel to and from the start of the 4th layer by getting to the end of the 3rd layer and fast traveling back whenever I'm done. And the hunger drain that the 4th layer requires is a sick joke. Maybe to throw us a bit of a bone, the next part of the story sees you catch up with Rico and Reg in the 4th layer, which is cool. It's around the time of the story where they meet up with Nanachi too. Rico ate something bad and needs medicine, but can't get it herself, so you have to fetch it for her. Then it appears that Reg is gone, so you have to accompany Rico to find him. Along the way you find Dechuanga's assistant, who dies on you. For the 4th layer, you really do just kind of go about with Rico. So it's a strange one, because it goes against every instinct not to do it, but you don't really need to go crazy with stocking up food for this part of the game. And what you really do need to stock up on is weapons. Whilst looking for Reg, Rico cooks up a bunch of recipes for you so your health and your hunger are always in check. But as you get cornered by different creatures, Reg shows up, fires his incinerator, and collapses. So you need to fight even more creatures whilst he recovers. If all of your weapons get broken, you're done for. You gotta reload it. So yeah, weapons are important to get this layer done. For this section, I was trying to maximize the amount of weapons that I could carry, and minimize the amount of food I needed, but of course, those runs go bad. Another thing I hate is that whenever you climb a rope, the game will spawn a million butterflies, and they didn't exist before. Oh no. And it's there to ensure that if you don't take some damage, your weapons will. Are you getting a bit more of a picture into how mad they went with this? It's insane. The whole questline with Rico and Reg is tagged purple. This usually distinguishes it as being a side quest. The Explore the 4th layer is completed when you see Dechuanga's assistant die. And this is on the course of that side quest. After which, you get the boss of the 4th layer, which kind of has a laser-based fighting style. And then you get to dip your feet in the 5th layer, and then get right the fuck back out of there so we can get back and become a black whistle. I forgot to mention that the layers end with these things. Not the boss fight itself that I have an issue with, but just these random robots. Like, why? It's never really properly explained. I suppose it's just Bondrood's droids, but spoiler alert for this section, it's just not explained. Anyway, it's onto layer 5. Tiare comes out of nowhere the second you plop yourself down and puts into words something that itself is never actually verbally put forth in the orphanage. That the final whistle, the white whistle, is the only one that cannot be given. Tiare seems absolute that either you or he will achieve that status soon, and then he mysteriously disappears again. I don't know why, obviously in the story this is dramatic and for dramatic effect, but I don't know why when this cutscene ends we can't just run after him, or he isn't just, you know, something to chase. We just let him walk away every time, despite the fact that he is the goal of the story. So you go to Ido Front, and it's at this point that Bondrood gives you a fetch quest. When you return with the items that he needs, he fights you, but then Prishka breaks the fight up before it gets too far. Obviously he would destroy the character in this situation, so I suppose they had to break up the fight some way. It is nice that we get to know Prishka a little bit. If you've seen the movie or if you've read the manga, you know that Prishka's not in the manga or the movie for very long. Then you go out back and have another talk with Tiare. It seems Dechuanga put Tiare up to obtain a white whistle, though it's not really fully explored. Basically, to obtain a white whistle, either you or Tiare have to sacrifice yourselves to become one. So you whoop his ass and learn that he apparently took out his eyes and replaced them with relics to give him a chance of even getting this far. So he takes them out. Don't know exactly why, but there we are. And you get your whistle and descend to the 6th layer. The game ends by saying you are the white whistle of mirages, the sovereign of phantasms, the unseen. But yeah, it's all pretty vapid considering we know the white whistles already. The story and that twist at the end is as predictable as expected. It's a load of bollocks. Stay away from this game is what my review basically amounts to. I flip-flop between liking it and not in the first few hours, but life's just too short not to be playing something like Disco Elysium or something, you know? The graphics stink, the story is not fulfilling enough, the gameplay hurts me internally, and the whole thing just feels half-baked conceptually. Literally, when it comes to the story. That complaint I had right at the beginning, of there being 2 half games for no reason, it somehow grew even more valid as a piece of criticism. Both of these stories end without an ending. They just end. For the sake of an introduction, they just do the first 24 chapters and end after Ozen, which is maybe the most boring point at which they could have adapted and ended a story based off of the manga. And in this one, who knows what happens to our character in the 6th layer? I think, fundamentally, there should have been some kind of scripted ending, a fully thought out one. Even an unhappy one for our character, so long as it serves an entertaining plot. They could have even had there be a few ending options. This ending actually kind of feels like that. It feels like one cutscene of a potential 3. And there should have been something like this. 1. You choose to become the white whistle yourself in the first place, and Tiare goes down. 2. You allow Tiare to turn into a whistle and descend, which is this ending. Or 3. You decide to turn around and not take the final dive at all. You return to the orphanage, and the story goes on for you. They probably didn't have the budget or the time to do multiple endings, but therein lies the problem. I can't even excuse them. If they hadn't made that other story, they could have padded out and made complete this one. It's one of those as well, where the price hasn't actually gone down that much, so you can still end up paying like 30 quid, $30 for this nonsense. At that price, you may as well just spend a little more and get yourself something brand new. Or at that price, anything you have your eye on. If I hadn't gotten this, who knows what else I'd be playing instead. Probably Indiana Jones, and I'd probably have had a much better time as well, to be honest. That's my thoughts on Made in Abyss, Binary Star, Falling into Darkness. Has anyone in the comments played this? I'd be surprised, but let me know. It is not worth getting, so if it's on your list of stuff to get around to, like it was for me, ignore, ignore, ignore. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been entertaining. Thanks to my patrons, thanks to my subscribers, thanks for liking and commenting below. I'm Alex, and everybody have a great night and a happy holidays.